Hey, welcome. Something is definitely stirring in the American workplace. From coffee shops to warehouses, there's this new energy bubbling up in the labor movement, a force that, honestly, a lot of people thought was gone for good. We're seeing strikes and union petitions pop up all over the place, and a whole new generation is asking for more. So, what's really behind this resurgence? Let's dig in. Okay, let's just start with this incredibly bold statement from Sarah Nilsson, who's one of the biggest labor leaders in the country. Workers have all of the power. I mean, think about that. It's a pretty radical idea, right? It totally challenges how most of us think about the economy. But it's this exact belief that's fueling the movement we're seeing. This idea that if workers just realize and act on their power together, they can fundamentally change the whole game. And this quote just perfectly captures the wider stakes here. According to organizers like Keith Bullard, this fight isn't just about a single paycheck or one person's contract. It's really about the health of our communities. The argument is simple. Low wages, bad conditions, no dignity at work. That stuff doesn't just stay at work. It ripples out, and it can drag down entire communities into instability. So we've heard the big ideas, the moral arguments. But what does the data actually say? What's the real, measurable impact of unions? Let's get into the numbers and see what this looks like in the real world for real people's wallets. So what's this number? 4 times? This is an absolute game changer. Research from the Center for American Progress found that the median wealth of a working-class household with a union number is 4 times larger than our non-union one. That is not a small difference. We're talking about the gap between just scraping by and actually having some stability. It's the difference between being stuck and being able to build a future. Now, let's look at how this plays out in a super practical way. This chart here shows a huge benefit for working-class women, especially those who don't have a high school diploma. Being in a union can literally double their chances of having health insurance. I mean, that's not just a statistic, right? That is a lifeline for so many families. So, what does this all add up to? Well, this chart here breaks down what economists call the union premium. And for decades, the data has been super consistent. Union workers earn about 20% more than their non-union peers in similar jobs. But as you can see, it's not just about the bigger paycheck. It's the whole package: better healthcare and a much more secure retirement. And here's what's really crucial. This isn't just about helping union members. A strong labor movement actually helps reduce inequality for everyone. How? Well, it raises the wage floor across the board. It pushes for things like a higher minimum wage, and it puts a check on runaway executive pay. The ripple effect is just massive. Okay, so with all that data in mind, let's zoom back into the present moment. After so many decades of decline, it really feels like something is changing. But what does this new wave of action actually look like? And could this be a real turning point for labor in America? This is the million-dollar question, isn't it? It's what all the labor organizers and analysts are trying to figure out right now. And they'll be the first to tell you, you often don't know you're in a historic moment until you can look back on it years later. But the feeling on the ground, it's just electric. This timeline really puts it all into perspective. Back at their peak in the 50s, unions were a huge force in America. But for the last 50 years, that power has been steadily chipped away, hitting an all-time low. And that long, slow decline is exactly why this recent spike in strikes and organizing feels so important. It's a sharp U-turn against a very long trend. I think this quote from Mark Meinster, an organizer with the United Electrical Workers, just nails it. Maybe it's not the massive history book upsurge of the 1930s. Not yet, anyway. But as he says, something is absolutely happening. You can feel the energy, the confidence, the willingness to take risks. It's just undeniable. So if something is happening, how are workers actually making it happen? Because the strategies they're using today look really different from the union drives of the past. It's like there's a whole new playbook. And you can really see the difference here. The old model, it was often slow, bureaucratic, focused on these formal government-run elections, one workplace at a time. This new wave is all about direct action. It's about organizing entire sectors at once, like all the fast food workers in a city. And it's been driven by the workers themselves. They're not just fighting for a bigger paycheck. They're fighting for a real say in how the business is run. So what's the new strategy? Well, it kind of boils down to these core principles. It all starts with democracy from the ground up, with the workers in charge. Then it's about breaking down the walls between different jobs and industries to build real power. Next, it's about taking direct action, like walkouts, instead of waiting on some slow, formal process. And this is key. The strike isn't a last resort anymore. It's a primary tool to make employers listen. And this right here is a huge mental shift. Groups like the Union of Southern Service Workers, they aren't asking for permission from the government or their boss. They're just getting together, declaring that they are a union, and acting like one from day one. They're taking collective action to demand change, period. But this new movement is up against a major roadblock, so-called right-to-work laws. Now, in simple terms, these laws basically let workers get all the benefits of a union contract, like better pay, better benefits, more job security, without having to help pay for the costs of running the union. It's a strategy designed to weaken unions by basically starving them of resources. And this is not a new fight. All the way back in 1961, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. framed this as much more than just an economic debate. He saw it as a civil rights issue. He called these laws a tool designed to divide workers and destroy the very organizations that were fighting for both economic and racial justice. You know, this whole fight over right-to-work laws really hints at something much bigger. When you listen to today's organizers, it becomes crystal clear that they don't just see this as a battle over contracts. They see it as a struggle for the very soul of democracy itself. Teamsters organizer Antonio Rosario puts it in really stark terms. He calls the situation a war on the working class. And when you see it from that perspective, solidarity isn't just some nice, fluffy idea. It's the only real strategy for survival and for victory in a conflict that affects millions of people. And when you listen to what workers are actually asking for across the country, you hear the same things over and over again. Yeah, of course they want fair pay, but they're also fighting for dignity. They're fighting to end these unfair two-tier systems where new hires get a worse deal. And really, at its heart, they're fighting for some control over their own time and for a real seat at the table when decisions are being made. And that leaves us with this final, really powerful question. A union, at its core, is just about having democracy in the workplace. So if that idea really starts to grow and flourish, what happens next? If millions of people start to experience real democracy where they work every day, how does that reshape what they expect from democracy everywhere else? In our communities, in our government, in our entire society? That's the real question, isn't it? Thanks for joining me.